I am initializing the daily log. The ambient temperature inside the pulpit has dropped to 4 degrees Celsius. My breath is creating a persistent fog on the primary glass panel, obscuring the view of the factory floor below. I have to wipe it away with a rag every 3 minutes to maintain visual confirmation of the perimeter. The condensation freezes almost immediately on the rag, making the fabric stiff and abrasive against the glass. I am wearing 3 layers of industrial-grade flame-retardant clothing, but the cold here is conductive. It travels through the steel floor grating, up through the soles of my boots, and settles in the joints of my knees. The structure of this booth is suspended 20 meters in the air, acting as a heat sink. It pulls the freezing temperature from the surrounding girders and radiates it inward. I have checked the seal on the door. The rubber gasket is cracked but holding. The facility creates its own microclimate. We are currently experiencing what I call the refrigerator effect. The massive steel skeleton of the mill absorbs the night's chill and holds it well into the day, meaning the interior temperature is consistently 5 to 8 degrees lower than the exterior reading. The air is stagnant and heavy with the scent of oxidized iron and ancient hydraulic fluid. There is no sunlight down here. The roof panels were shattered years ago, but the accumulation of grime and the angle of the winter sun means only gray, diffused light filters through. It creates shadows that look solid, making visual identification of threats unreliable. This is why I do not rely on my eyes alone. My survival depends on data, not optics. I am rubbing my hands together to generate enough friction to type without errors. I am checking the primary energy inputs. The voltage meter on the battery bank reads 24.3 volts. This is marginally acceptable. The wind outside has picked up, driving the improvised turbines I welded into the exhaust stacks on the north wall. The draft created by the height of the chimneys accelerates the airflow, spinning the rotors even when the ground-level wind is calm. I can hear the low-frequency hum of the charging current moving through the heavy-gauge cables I ran along the ceiling beams. It is a steady, reassuring vibration that I can feel in the soles of my feet. However, the charge rate is slow. The bearings on turbine 2 are grinding. I can hear the friction loss in the pitch of the spin. I will need to lubricate them soon, but that requires a climb I am not willing to make today. I am facing a resource allocation conflict. The heating array consists of 4 ceramic resistors salvaged from an industrial drying oven. 2 have failed completely in the last month. Running the remaining 2 at full capacity draws 12 amps. The security system, comprised of the analog CCTV cameras and the oscilloscope array, draws 4 amps. The battery bank cannot sustain both loads simultaneously for more than 6 hours before dropping below the critical threshold for the hydraulic pumps. If the voltage drops too low, the pumps won't start, and I lose control of the crane. I have made the decision to cycle the heat. I will run the resistors for 20 minutes every hour. The rest of the time I will rely on insulation and body heat. It is an efficiency calculation. Freezing is a slow death. A scrapper invasion is a fast one. My physical security remains uncompromised. The pulpit is accessible only by a single I-beam that spans the gap between this suspended cage and the main catwalk. 2 years ago, I used an acetylene torch to cut away the access stairs. I have coated the top flange of the connecting beam with a thick layer of lithium grease mixed with crushed glass. Anyone attempting to cross it without the specific harness system I designed would lose traction immediately. A fall from this height onto the concrete floor is fatal. I check the beam daily through the scope of my rifle. The grease is undisturbed. The dust settling on it is uniform. This confirms that no biological entity has attempted a crossing in the last 24 hours. I am performing maintenance on the radio receiver. The tuning knob has developed a dead spot between 98 and 102 megahertz, due to corrosion on the potentiometer. I have disassembled the front panel to access the component. The solder joints are brittle from the cold. I have to heat the soldering iron using a direct line from the battery, which is a risky bypass but necessary. My hands are shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the low temperature affecting my fine motor skills. I apply a small amount of flux to the contact. The smell of burning rosin fills the small booth, masking the smell of mildew for a moment. It is a sharp chemical scent that reminds me of the old maintenance shifts. I stabilize my hand against the desk edge and make the connection. The solder flows silver and smooth, a perfect joint. The silence is broken by the public address system. The speakers are ancient horns mounted high in the rafters, wired into the central mainframe I call Overlord. The system operates on a separate geothermal backup circuit I cannot access or disable. Attention Sector 7, personnel! The voice booms. It is a synthesized male voice distorted by blown speaker cones and echo. Mandatory safety briefing in 5 minutes. PPE is required. The sound rolls through the empty factory like thunder, bouncing off the metal walls. It serves no purpose, yet it persists. I do not find it annoying. It is a constant variable in my equation. A reminder that the logic of the factory survives, even if the workers do not. I acknowledge the announcement out of habit. Copy that, Overlord. Sector 7 is clear. I say to the empty air. The system does not hear me. The microphone inputs on the floor were severed during the looting years ago. Overlord continues its programmed loop. Production goal, 800 tons. Current output, 0. Efficiency rating, critical. The machine is distressed by the lack of data. It interprets the silence of the machinery as a massive localized failure of the workforce. In a way, it is correct. I check the log on my control panel. Overlord has flagged 17 safety violations this morning, mostly personnel detected in restricted zones, which are actually just pigeons nesting in the gantry cranes. I am scanning the floor below using the binoculars. The ground level is a maze of dormant machinery. The rolling mills, the cooling beds, and the massive coil winders sit like dead giants in the gloom. Scrappers have stripped the copper wiring from the easy-to-reach motors, leaving the casings open like rib cages. There are piles of debris where they cut through non-essential supports before realizing they weren't load-bearing. The floor is covered in a layer of soot and oil that absorbs light. I am looking for new shapes. A pile of slag that has moved. A shadow that is too geometric. Everything appears static. The only movement is a tarp flapping near the south loading bay, driven by the draft. The acoustic environment of the mill is shifting. The wind outside has changed direction, now hitting the western wall. This forces air through the corrugated gaps in the siding, creating a resonant vibration. It sounds like a low, continuous moan that rises in pitch as the gust strength increases. I know this sound. It is the frequency of loose sheet metal vibrating against a rusted bolt. To an untrained ear, it might sound like a vehicle engine or a scream. I analyze the waveform on my mental diagram. It is purely mechanical. I verify this by watching a loose panel on the far wall vibrate in sync with the sound. Cause and effect. Physics is the only truth here. I am reviewing the threat profile for the week. The scrappers are moving south from the automotive district. They operate like locusts. They do not build, they subtract. They use oxyacetylene torches and portable hydraulic cutters to dismantle infrastructure for trade. They have no understanding of structural integrity. If they cut the wrong pillar in this building, the roof collapses, crushing the pulpit and everything else. My objective is not just self-preservation. It is the preservation of the facility's geometry. They want the high-grade steel of the support columns. I have seen their work in the distance. Smoke rising from the ruins of the assembly plant 3 miles north. They are getting closer. I cannot watch every entrance simultaneously, so I rely on the vibration detection grid. I have glued piezoelectric sensors, salvaged from digital weighing scales, to the base of the 20 main support columns. These sensors convert physical vibration into an electrical signal. Wires run from each sensor along the high rafters, terminating here at my control desk. I have connected them to a multi-channel oscilloscope. It acts as a seismograph for the factory floor. I do not need to see an intruder to know they are there. I can see their footsteps as green spikes on the screen. The system is sensitive enough to detect a rat running across a beam at 50 meters. I am calibrating the oscilloscope channels. Channel 1 represents the north gate. The line is flat, save for a rhythmic low-amplitude sine wave. That is the wind vibrating the heavy sliding doors. If someone were to pry those doors open, the friction of the steel rollers would create a chaotic, jagged, high-frequency burst on the screen. Channel 2 monitors the main aisle. It is perfectly flat. Dead silence. Channel 3 covers the eastern catwalks. I see occasional microspikes. Thermal contraction. As the steel cools, it shrinks and pops. The signal is sharp and instantaneous, indistinguishable from a gunshot to the ear, but visually distinct on the scope as a single vertical line with no decay. I notice an anomaly on Channel 4. This sensor is attached to the spiral staircase near the blast furnace, a likely entry point for anyone avoiding the main gates. The signal shows a series of weak, irregular pulses. I adjust the gain to amplify the waveform. The pattern is erratic. Tap, tap, pause, scrape. It lacks the heavy rhythmic cadence of human bipedal motion. A human step has a specific attack and decay profile. The heel strike followed by the toe push. This signal is too light. It is likely a loose cable swinging in the draft and hitting the railing. I make a note in the log. Sensor 4. Mechanical interference probable. I will not expend energy investigating it visually yet. It is time for caloric intake. I am opening a can of condensed milk and a packet of dried crackers. The date on the can is 6 years expired, but the seal was intact. The sugar content is necessary for brain function. The cold accelerates my metabolism as my body fights to maintain core temperature. I eat slowly, chewing thoroughly to maximize digestion efficiency. I do not heat the food. Heating requires fuel, and fuel is for the generator. The taste is metallic, likely from the can itself, but I ignore the sensory data. It is fuel, nothing more. I drink water from my filtration system, rainwater collected from the roof gutters, passed through layers of charcoal and sand. It tastes of zinc and bird droppings, but it is sterile. A warning light flashes on my heater control board. The resistance on coil 2 has spiked to infinity. The circuit is open. The element has burned out. I hear the relay click off. The small amount of radiant heat hitting my legs vanishes instantly. The temperature in the booth begins to fall perceptibly. I watch the digital thermometer drop from 4.1 to 3.8 degrees in less than a minute. This is a critical failure. With only one resistor left, I cannot maintain the minimum operating temperature for the electronic components on the main board. If the capacitors get too cold, they will drift out of tolerance, and the control logic for the crane will become erratic. I must attempt a repair or a bypass immediately. I slide under the control desk, opening the access panel to the heater unit. The space is cramped and dark. I hold a flashlight in my teeth. The beam illuminates the charred remains of the nichrome wire coil. It has snapped at the terminal connection. I cannot weld it. The wire is too brittle. I need to shorten the circuit, reconnecting the remaining wire to the terminal. This will lower the resistance and increase the current draw, making the heater hotter but risking a fuse blowout. It is a calculated risk. I strip the insulation from the wire using my teeth, tasting the bitter plastic. I twist the wire around the terminal screw and tighten it. My fingers are numb, making it difficult to apply the necessary torque. I slip once, scraping my knuckles against the sharp sheet metal casing. I do not feel the pain, only the impact. I crawl back out and flip the switch. There is a hum, louder than before, and the smell of burning dust intensifies. The coil glows a bright, angry orange. The amp meter needles pin to the red zone. It is holding, but the wire is running too hot. It will fail again, likely within 48 hours. But for now, the temperature climb has resumed. 4.0 degrees, 4.2. I wrap my hand in a rag and press it against the vent to capture the warmth. Overlord interrupts my brief moment of relief. Shift change in Sector 4. All personnel report to decontamination. The voice is louder this time, or perhaps the silence in the pulpit made it seem so. The irony is efficient. Sector 4 was the casting pit. It has been flooded with groundwater for 5 years. Anyone reporting there would be wading in toxic sludge. Report received, Overlord, I mutter. Sector 4 is underwater. Update your parameters. The machine ignores me. It simply plays a recording of a shift whistle, a piercing electronic tone that cuts through the wind noise outside. Night has fully descended. The gray light in the factory has turned to absolute blackness. I rely entirely on the pale green glow of the instrument panels and the monitors. The darkness changes the acoustics. The wind seems louder when you cannot see its source. The isolation feels heavier at night. The vast empty space around the pulpit feels like a physical weight pressing against the glass. I switch the oscilloscope display to night mode to reduce glare. The green lines are the only reality I trust. Outside, the factory is a cavern of steel teeth waiting for a mistake. I begin my nightly radio sweep. I put on the heavy headset, blocking out the wind noise. I rotate the dial slowly through the shortwave bands. Static, white noise, the chaotic crackle of atmospheric interference. Occasionally, I pick up distant signals, Russian automated beacons, or perhaps just echoes bouncing off the ionosphere. Then, at 4.5 megahertz, I stop. The static clears slightly. I hear a rhythmic sound. It is not speech. It is not Morse code. It sounds like breathing, heavy, wet respiration. It is faint, buried under the noise floor, but distinct. I adjust the fine-tuning knob. The sound clarifies. In, out, in, out. It is too regular to be natural interference, but too organic to be a machine. I check the signal strength meter. It is weak, suggesting the source is not inside the factory, but close, maybe within a 2-mile radius. A scrapper patrol with an open mic? No, they would be talking, swearing, clanging gear. This is just breathing. It sounds exhausted or injured. I stare at the speaker cone as if I can see the source. I do not transmit. To transmit is to reveal my location. I just listen to the unknown lungs gasping in the dark. I take off the headset. The silence of the booth rushes back in. I feel a spike of cortisol, a chemical inefficiency. Paranoia is useful only if it leads to action. I look at the oscilloscope. All channels are flat. The vibration sensors show nothing. If someone is out there, they are not inside the perimeter yet. But the breathing on the radio suggests they are close enough for a low-power handheld transceiver to reach me. I force myself to breathe in a box pattern. 4 seconds in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. I must trust the sensors. The sensors are physics. Physics does not lie. I decide to expend energy on a visual check. I toggle the switch for CCTV camera 3, the only one still functional that overlooks the external loading dock. The monitor flickers, rolls, and then stabilizes into a grainy black and white image. The low light sensitivity is poor. I see the outline of the loading bay doors and the debris scattered on the concrete apron. Nothing moves. The image is snowy, filled with artifacts. I stare at the screen for 60 seconds, looking for pixel changes. A scrapper moving in dark clothing would be a ghost. I see nothing. I cut the power to the camera to save the battery. Suddenly, channel 1 on the oscilloscope spikes. It is not a drift. It is a violent vertical jump. The green line shoots up and down, forming a sharp V. My heart rate matches the spike. I freeze, eyes locked on the screen. The signal came from the north gate. The amplitude indicates a high-energy impact. Metal striking metal. Hard. It was not the wind. The wind is a wave. This was a hammer blow. I analyzed the signature. The decay of the wave was short. That means the object struck was rigid. The gate frame. Someone hit the external gate with something heavy, likely a sledgehammer or a pry bar. I wait. 10 seconds pass. Another spike, identical to the first. They are testing the structural integrity of the lock. It is not an animal. A bear does not strike with rhythmic precision. This is intelligent intent. Victor, initiate protocol yellow. The spikes continue. 1, 2, 3. A pause. Then a new sound reaches my ears directly, bypassing the electronics. It is a dull, echoing clang reverberating through the factory shell. The sound has traveled through the air, arriving milliseconds after the vibration traveled through the steel floor. They are breaching the north gate. The rhythm suggests 2 individuals working in tandem. Strike, pause, strike. They are trying to shear the locking pins. Overlord wakes up. The vibration has triggered a localized alarm in the mainframe. Security alert. Perimeter breach detected at gate north 1. Unauthorized access. The voice is calm, devoid of urgency. Please present identification badge to security personnel. The absurdity of the request is lost on the machine. There are no security personnel. I am the security personnel. I unlock the cover on the master control panel for the overhead bridge crane. I flip the breaker for the hydraulic pump. The lights in the booth dim momentarily as the heavy motor draws starting current. Deep in the rafters above me, the crane's hydraulic unit groans to life. It is a massive sound, a beast waking up. Fluid rushes through the lines, pressurizing the pistons. The scrappers at the gate will hear this. There is no way to hide it. The element of surprise is gone. Now it is a matter of superior tonnage. I place my hands on the dual joystick controls. The metal levers are freezing cold. I do not engage yet. I watch the oscilloscope. The hammering at the gate stops. They heard the pump. They are listening. I can imagine them freezing, looking up into the darkness, trying to locate the source of the mechanical growl. I hold the joystick steady. I need them to enter. I need them to step onto the dance floor, the open area of the main assembly bay. I cannot crush them in the doorway. I need them inside the trap. I wait, watching the green line on the screen, waiting for the vibration of footsteps on the inner floor plates. The wait is the most inefficient part of the defense protocol. My hands are gripping the crane controls. the cold steel of the levers leaching the remaining heat from my palms. The hydraulic pump is idling, a low-frequency thrum that vibrates the floor grating and travels up through the soles of my boots. It is a wasteful expenditure of energy, but shutting it down now would mean a 30-second repressurization delay I cannot afford. On the oscilloscope, the green traces flat again. The hammering has stopped. They are discussing their next move. I can picture them, breath steaming in the cold air, looking at the locking mechanism, calculating the leverage needed. Then, the signal returns. It is not a spike this time, but a chaotic, jagged wave of high amplitude. The sound reaches me a split second later. The screech of rusted iron sliding against iron. The north gate has been breached. The heavy sliding door has been forced off its track. It falls inward with a deafening crash that shakes the dust from the overhead trusses. The impact registers on the scope as a massive blur, momentarily washing out the screen. The facility sighs as the air pressure equalizes, a cold draft rushing in from the breach, carrying the smell of snow and unburnt hydrocarbons. I adjust the gain on the oscilloscope to filter out the background noise of the settling gate. I need to isolate individual signatures. The green line settles, then jumps. Step, step, step. The waveforms are distinct. Heavy boots on concrete, then the sharper metallic ring of boots transitioning onto the steel floor plates of the main aisle. I count the patterns. 1 set of footsteps. 2. 3. There is a fourth, lighter signal. Perhaps someone carrying less gear, or moving with more caution. A 4-man team. This is a standard scavenging unit. 2 muscle, 1 cutter, 1 lookout. I glance at the CCTV monitor for confirmation, but they are staying in the blind spots, hugging the shadows of the massive rolling machines. Intelligent. They know the layout, or at least the principles of industrial infiltration, but they do not know the floor is wired. I watch the green spikes move across the screen, traversing from Channel 1, North Gate, to Channel 2, Main Aisle. They are moving toward the central heavy casting area. They are heading for the copper bus bars in the main substation. That creates a tactical opportunity. To get there, they must cross the open expanse of Bay 3. I engage the bridge motor. I push the left joystick forward gently. The contactors in the electrical cabinet behind me slam shut with a loud clack, like a gunshot in the small booth. The entire pulpit lurches forward as the massive overhead crane begins to move along the rails. The wheels are steel on steel, unlubricated for years. They scream. It is a high-pitched, torturous grinding sound that echoes through the cavernous mill, drowning out the wind. This is psychological warfare. I am not just moving a machine. I am announcing that the ceiling itself is alive. Below, the flashlights scatter. I see them now. 4 beams of white light cutting through the suspended dust. They panic, sweeping the beams wildly up toward the darkness of the rafters. They cannot see me. The pulpit is dark, and the glare of their own lights against the dust blinds them to anything above 10 meters. I am a voice in the sky. I check the voltage meter. The starting torque of the bridge motor dropped the bank to 22.1 volts. I ease off the stick, letting the momentum of the 50-ton crane carry it forward. Inertia is free energy. I align the crane hook above Bay 3. I have a suspended load pre-rigged on the auxiliary hoist, a 2-ton coil of scrap steel chain, rusted into a solid block. It is a pendulum of kinetic energy. I watch the flashlight beams enter the zone. They are cautious, weapons raised. I see the glint of a rifle barrel in the spill light. They are armed. This changes the risk assessment. Ballistics introduce a variable I cannot control. I must keep them pinned. I toggle the hoist control. The winch brake releases with a pneumatic hiss. The chain block descends. I do not drop it on them. That would be a waste of resources and potentially damage the floor. I drop it 10 meters in front of them. The block hits the steel deck with the force of a bomb. Boom! The impact sends a shockwave through the floor plates. The oscilloscope needles pin to the max. The flashlight beams jerk wildly. The intruders scramble back, retreating toward the cover of a large stamping press. Overlord decides to contribute to the chaos. The vibration of the impact has tricked a sensor. Seismic activity detected. The voice booms, skipping on a corrupted syllable. Evacuate the facility. Proceed to muster point Alpha. The strobe lights on the emergency pillars begin to flash. Most are broken, but 3 of them strobe in a disorienting, rhythmic yellow pulses. The factory floor is now a strobe-lit nightmare of shifting shadows and deafening mechanical noise. I use the distraction to reposition the crane. I slide the bridge 10 meters south, putting the pulpit directly over their position, but high enough to be out of easy firing angles. I can hear them shouting now, voices thin and tinny against the industrial echo. They are confused. They think the building is collapsing, but the cutter, the one with the heavy pack, is pointing up. He has figured it out. He knows the crane didn't fall, it was driven. A spark of light erupts below, followed by the sharp, cracked thump of a rifle shot. A bullet strikes the underside of the pulpit. The armored floor plate absorbs it. The sound a dull hammer tap against my feet. They have engaged. I cannot stay static. A stationary target is a dead target. I slam the bridge stick in reverse. The motors whine in protest, the voltage sagging dangerously to 20.8 volts. The crane groans and shudders as it fights its own momentum, wheels screeching, sparks showering down from the rails as the steel grinds. I need to herd them. I cannot fight a gunfight from a glass cage. I need to force them into the maze, the section of the floor where I have stacked shipping containers and old turbine housings. If I can get them in there, their line of sight is broken, and I can use the smaller hoists to block their path. I swing the main hook, a massive steel block the size of a car, in a low arc. It sweeps through the air just above head height, a wrecking ball moving through the strobe light. The scrappers dive. The hook smashes into a stack of empty oil drums, sending them clattering across the floor like bowling pins. The noise is cacophonous. The psychological stress on the intruders is peaking. They break formation. 2 run back toward the gate. 2 run forward, seeking cover in the maze. Divide and conquer. I focus on the 2 moving forward. The ones retreating are irrelevant. They are leaving the system. The ones advancing are the virus. I track the forward pair on the oscilloscope. Channel 5 and 6 sensors pick them up entering the container stack. The signal is different here. The floor is concrete, so the vibration is duller, harder to read. I have to rely on the thermal contrast. I switch on the FLIR, forward-looking infrared camera, a precious resource I salvaged from a police drone. The battery life on the flare is garbage, maybe 10 minutes max. I toggle it on. The screen blooms into grayscale. The factory is cold, dark gray and black. The intruders are 2 bright white hotspots, burning with adrenaline and exertion. They are hiding behind a compressor unit. The cutter is setting up his equipment. I see the white flare of a pilot light igniting. He is lighting an oxy lance. He isn't trying to cut the bus bars anymore. He is cutting the support column of the catwalk that leads to the main battery bank. If he severs that, the walkway collapses, tearing the power cables with it. I will lose the crane, the lights, and the heat. He has identified the jugular of the facility. He is an engineer. I feel a rare surge of anger, an inefficiency, but a potent one. He is attacking the logic of the machine. I cannot allow this. I scan the area above them. There is a hopper filled with limestone flux, a remnant of the smelting days. The release lever is manual, located on the catwalk directly above them. But I am in the pulpit, 50 meters away. I cannot reach the lever. I have to use the crane to trigger it mechanically. I maneuver the crane hook again. It is a delicate operation. I need to swing the heavy block so that it strikes the release lever on the hopper. It requires precision, not force. The wind is gusting through the roof, pushing the cables. I have to compensate for the sway. I watch the cable sway on the monitor. Left, right, left, now. I punch the trolley control. The hook swings out, catching the rusty lever. The mechanism is seized. The hook pulls taut. The crane motor whines, straining against the resistance. The voltage alarm screams. 19.5 volts. Warning, low power. Overlord remarks helpfully. Conserve energy. I ignore it. I push the throttle to the stop. The cable sings, tight as a piano string. Suddenly the rust gives way. The lever snaps open. Tons of crushed limestone pour out of the hopper. It is a white avalanche, falling directly onto the scrapper's position. The dust cloud is instantaneous and blinding. The thermal image goes white as the friction of the falling stone generates heat. The oxylance flame is snuffed out. The cutting stops. I hear coughing, choking sounds amplified by the cavernous acoustics. The limestone is caustic. It burns the eyes and lungs. I cut the power to the crane motors immediately to save the battery. The silence returns, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the wheezing of the men below and the relentless wind. The voltage creeps back up slowly, 21.0 volts. The battery bank is wounded. I have expended 3 days' worth of power in 5 minutes. I wrap my arms around my chest. The heater is off. The adrenaline is fading, and the cold is reclaiming my extremities. Environmental hazard detected in Sector 2, Overlord announces. Particulate matter levels critical. The system triggers the ventilation fans. This is a disaster. The fans are massive industrial blowers. If they try to start, they will kill the battery completely. I scramble under the desk, ripping the faceplate off the breaker box. I have to pull the fuse for the ventilation system before the relays close. My fingers are numb, clumsy blocks of flesh. I find the breaker labeled HVAC main. I grab it with pliers and yank. A spark showers onto my face, stinging my cheek. The breaker comes free. The sound of the contactors trying to close, clack, 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 stops. I lie there on the freezing metal floor, breathing hard. The fog of my breath is thick. I have saved the power, but I have blinded myself. The dust cloud below is not clearing. I crawl back to the chair and check the scope. The signals from the maze are erratic, stumbling, falling. They are disoriented, perhaps blinded by the lime, but they are not neutralized. One signal is moving away from the debris, moving fast. Not toward the exit, toward the access pillar, the I-beam, the only way up to the pulpit. I grab the grease gun and my modified flare pistol. I move to the door of the pulpit. The air outside is biting, 20 degrees below zero with the wind chill. I step out onto the small maintenance platform. The wind threatens to tear me from the railing. I look down the length of the I-beam connecting me to the main structure. Through the swirling limestone dust, I see a shape, a hand gripping the flange of the beam. Someone is climbing. They have bypassed the grease. How? I squint through the gloom. Crampons. They are wearing ice-climbing spikes on their hands and boots, biting through the grease and into the steel. It is the cutter. He is coming for me. I raise the flare pistol. It is loaded with a magnesium round, designed to illuminate, not to kill. But at this range, physics dictates it will do significant damage. I aim not at him, but at the steel beam directly in front of his face. I want to blind him, to break his focus. I pull the trigger. The recoil is sharp. The flare strikes the beam and ignites with a blinding white intensity, burning at 2,000 degrees. The shadows in the factory are instantly cast in stark relief. The cutter screams, shielding his eyes, his grip faltering. He slides a few inches, the crampons screeching against the steel, sending sparks cascading down into the dark void below. He hangs there, one hand holding on, suspended 20 meters above the concrete. The flare sputters and dies, leaving purple spots in my vision. Darkness rushes back in, absolute and crushing. I listen. I hear his breathing, ragged, angry. He didn't fall. He is recovering. He resumes the climb. Crunch, crunch, the sound of metal spikes biting metal. He is 10 meters away. I retreat inside the pulpit and lock the door. It is a futile gesture. The door is glass and thin sheet metal. If he reaches the platform, he gets in. I look at my console. The crane is dead. The batteries are too low to move the bridge. I have one card left to play. The hydraulic fluid lines for the crane run directly over the entrance platform. They are pressurized to 3,000 psi. I grab the fire axe from the wall mount. I stand by the door, waiting. I will not engage him hand to hand. I am an engineer, not a soldier. I will use the system. If I sever the hydraulic line just as he reaches the door, the jet of high-pressure oil will cut him in half, or at the very least, knock him off the platform. But it will also bleed the crane dry, rendering it useless forever. It is a terminal sacrifice. Warning, Overlord whispers. The voltage so low the voice synthesizer is slurring. System, failing. Goodbye. Victor. The lights on the dashboard flicker and die. The pulpit goes pitch black. I am alone in the dark with the wind, the cold, and the sound of spikes crunching closer. Crunch, crunch. 5 meters. I raise the axe. I can smell the unwashed sweat of the man outside through the door vents. I calculate the swing arc in my mind, diagramming the failure point. I wait for the shadow to block the wind. The scratching noise of the crampons ceases. He has reached the maintenance platform. I can see his silhouette through the frosted glass of the door, a dark, bulky shape against the swirling gray of the limestone dust. He does not try to break the glass immediately. He tests the handle. It is locked. I hear a heavy metallic clank as he unslings a pry bar from his pack. He is confident. He believes the machine is dead and I am trapped in a cage. He is partially correct. The machine is dead, but the hydraulic system retains residual pressure. It is a stored energy bomb waiting for a trigger. I grip the axe handle with both hands, my gloves slick with sweat despite the freezing temperature. I anchor my boots against the base of the control console. The glass shatters. He strikes the pane nearest the lock, the safety glass crumbling into thousands of blunt diamonds that cascade onto the metal floor. His hand reaches in, gloved and eager, fumbling for the latch. This is the variable I was waiting for. I do not attack his arm. I swing the axe overhead, aiming for the flexible coupling of the main hydraulic feed line mounted on the wall just inside the door. The blade bites deep into the steel-braided rubber. The hose does not just leak, it explodes. 3,000 pounds per square inch of pressure finds an exit vector. The sound is not a hiss, it is a shriek, a high-frequency tear in the air that hurts the teeth. A jet of red hydraulic fluid, atomized by the pressure, erupts from the severed line. It hits the intruder in the chest with the kinetic energy of a fire hose. At this pressure, fluid acts like a solid. It lifts him off his feet. There is no struggle, no moment of realization. Physics dictates his trajectory. He is blasted backward, his grip on the door frame broken instantly. He disappears from the frame. I do not hear him hit the ground. The roar of the escaping fluid drowns out everything. The pulpit is instantly coated in a film of hot oil. The fluid was the lifeblood of the crane, kept warm by the friction of the pumps. Now it covers the monitors, the floor, and me. The heat is fleeting. As it hits the freezing air, the oil begins to thicken, turning into a viscous sludge. I drop the axe. It clatters onto the slick floor. The shrieking fades to a sputter as the accumulator tank empties. The silence that follows is heavier than before. The crane is dead. I have bled the beast dry to kill one parasite. I attempt to check the monitors, but they are black. The oil has shorted the control board. Sparks shower from behind the dashboard, igniting small pockets of vapor, but they die out quickly in the cold. I am blind. I wipe the oil from my face, the taste bitter and chemical. I crawl to the broken door. The wind is rushing in now, carrying the snow directly into the booth. I look down. The strobe lights below have died. The factory floor is a vast, swallowing darkness. There is no sign of the other scrappers. If they are there, they are static. A new sound emerges. It is deep, resonant, coming from the structure above me. Groan. It is the sound of steel yielding. The scrappers damaged the support column, but the violent recoil of the hydraulic rupture has added a new stress load to the suspension cables. The pulpit vibrates, not the high-frequency hum of machinery, but the low-frequency shudder of instability. I grab the desk to steady myself. The floor tilts, 5 degrees to the north. A coffee mug slides off the desk and smashes against the wall. The tilt increases. The pulpit is losing its horizontal axis. One of the 4 main tension cables has sheared. I can hear the whip crack of the steel strands snapping high in the dark rafters. The structure swings, a pendulum of glass and steel hanging over the abyss. I slide across the oil-slicked floor, slamming into the sidewall. The pain in my shoulder is sharp, irrelevant data. I fumble for the emergency radio handset. It is wired to a separate battery circuit. It is the only thing still glowing, a faint red LED in the chaos. I hold the receiver to my ear. The breathing is still there, louder now. In, out, and then clarity. The wind is blowing through the shattered pane of the door, passing over the open mouth of the metal conduit pipe I used for cable management. It creates a Helmholtz resonance. The breathing was never a person. It was the factory itself, the wind playing the building like a flute. I have been listening to the hollow chest of a corpse. There were never any survivors on the frequency, just the physics of air and geometry. The floor drops another 10 degrees. I am wedged in the corner now, looking up through the shattered roof panels. I can see a single star through the clouds. It looks cold. The final cable is unraveling. I can hear the individual wires popping. A countdown clock made of tension. I do not scream. I do not pray. I reach for the log recorder. I press the record button with a thumb that no longer has sensation. It is important to document the failure mode. The next engineer must know. Log entry, final. Structural failure imminent. Cause, cumulative stress fracture on north quadrant support, aggravated by emergency hydraulic vent. System purged. Perimeter, clear. Logic core, shutting down. The floor lurches violently. The last cable gives way. The sensation of weightlessness is brief, a sudden negation of gravity before the inevitable impact. The wind screams as the pulpit falls. As the metal screams and tears, the backup speaker of the overlord system flickers on for one last distorted loop, powered by the dying surge of the collapsing grid. Attention! Shift ended. Have a safe day.